Wow, this was such a good episode. I really loved it. To me, this was the best episode since season 1's season finale, which I felt also really just came together beautifully. I love The Mandalorian as a show when it's its own thing, because it's wonderful. Now, we're going to talk about it in just a moment, but I want to give a shout out to Carl Weathers, a huge shout out. We've been talking about the directors all season. We talked about the directors last season too, and I think it's really commendable that The Mandalorian as a show spotlights the behind the camera talent. I think that's great. Carl Weathers is a football player turned actor turned director, and as a director, he doesn't even have that much experience, but he did a phenomenal job here. He's right on par with the experienced directors who are working alongside him on The Mandalorian, which also means we need to give a shout out to the rest of the crew, who obviously is creating consistency and helping everybody out. I mean, yes, one of them did appear in one of the shots. I didn't notice it while watching. You know, I was interviewing the new showrunner on the upcoming Game of Thrones prequel, and he pointed out that there have always been mistakes like this, and because he has a podcast that's out right now about movie memorabilia. But he said there's always been little slip-ups like this. But now that people can pause each frame and, you know, lighten it up very easily on their computers, it becomes more apparent. But I mean, I didn't notice it while I was watching, but it is pretty funny. But yeah, so I think that everybody behind the camera on The Mandalorian is just doing a fabulous job as well. You know, when I saw that The Mandalorian wasn't trending at all this morning, on a rather slow news day to boot, I was surprised. But now, having watched Chapter 12, I'm sad, because again, to me, this is the way. And there's a lot to talk about here too. How are people not talking about all the stuff that happened in this episode? What do you think it is? I'm sure there's going to be someone who's like, it was trending for me, Grace. It wasn't trending all day in United States trends. It might have trended when it first dropped, but by like 11 a.m. noon Eastern Standard Time, not trending. That's really weird. I think maybe the show, it takes so long for it to come together. But when it does, it really does. I mean, I feel that The Mandalorian Season 2 finds itself torn between its two captains. Dave Filoni wants to bring his animated characters over to live action, delighting fans of those shows, you know, to potentially get spin-offs for them. And then Jon Favreau, I think Jon Favreau is happy to do both. I wish Jon Favreau would stick to his guns, but you know, I think he wants to tell a really great story about what happened after Return of the Jedi with a new group of characters, and that delights fans of the main films. I think that there are different levels of Star Wars fans, and that's where a lot of, I think, the infighting comes from. And unfortunately, there's like a fandom for each trilogy, but each trilogy is so incredibly different. If you're a fan of the original trilogy, I think today's episode was particularly fantastic. And I'm totally cool with Filoni's characters, by the way, coming over to live action. I just don't think there's room for them in The Mandalorian. I think it is a disservice to this show to shoehorn them in there, because The Mandalorian needs its time. It's only 8 episodes a season that are short. If I had one complaint about this episode, again, it would be that it's too short. But look how good things are when we stick to the main story. But before we get to all the amazing reveals of this episode, let's take a moment to talk about Baby Yoda. One of you tweeted me that you just can't stay mad at the little guy. And I agree! He re-stole my heart this episode. All his interactions with not just Mando, but his fellow students, to me, that felt like the magic of classic Star Wars. You know, with the alien puppet characters that everyone's loved over the years, the droids. I mean, to me, it was just wonderful. That's how I would describe, again, this entire episode, classic Star Wars magic, and I absolutely loved it. All right, so right away, Mando trying to get Baby Yoda to help prepare the Razor Crest was amazing. And you know what? I don't think it was that ridiculous an idea. Baby Yoda did fit in there, and Baby Yoda seemed to have some idea of what he was doing. I loved it. That, to me, it was just so Star Wars. I thought it was fantastic. Then Baby Yoda using the Force to get some macaroons. And by the way, I also think it's hilarious that someone in The Mandalorian's prop department felt that macaroons are exotic enough to double as space cookies. I'm like, couldn't someone make some kind of cookie in the prop department that looked like a cookie, like it was like a cookie we've never seen before? So I thought, although I do like macaroons, so I was like, Baby Yoda, Force pass me one of those. And Baby Yoda would be like, no, now they're all mine. And then on the Razor Crest, when Baby Yoda put his hands in the air like he just didn't care, like he was on a roller coaster, right? When they were doing all those maneuvers. We'll talk about Mando's flying. Wow, it deserves finally to get some attention. But that was so cute. And then Baby Yoda spit up all his macaroons. Oh my God, this was fantastic. I've been saying, where's my Baby Yoda-ness? And this episode delivered. And not only were these interactions adorable and funny, but they were interactions. Baby Yoda is learning to talk. He's learning to interact with his environment. Soon, we will be able to have conversations with him. And I cannot wait. Or her. It's never been established, Baby Yoda's sex. But I have to say, I hope that Baby Yoda and Mando never split up. I mean, I know that that's the whole purpose of this season is to give him to someone else, but I hope that he decides not to do it. I'd love to have many, many seasons, perhaps including a time jump, but still many, many seasons, and to see them, Mando and Baby Yoda, become the new Han and Chewie of Star Wars, right? Only this time Chewie actually talks. Backwards talk like Yoda, although was that something that is native to the species, or is that just a quirk that Yoda decided to take on? But I want to see this. I mean, how can this not happen, them being a cool, bounty hunting action duo through the galaxy? Oh my God, father and son. I love it. All right, so to just organically see the story from season 1 finally continue with Mando-specific characters, and to finally find out what Moff Gideon wants with Baby Yoda. Finally, how was this not happening earlier in the season? But it was just so satisfying, right? It was so satisfying. It's like not only is Mando taking detours, but the show itself is taking detours to help out Dave Filoni. But it was great to see Cara Dune as the Marshal of Navarro, especially after seeing Timothy Olyphant's Marshal of his town at the beginning of the season. But Dune, she don't need no armor to get her job done. I thought her action sequences were excellent. And look, politics aside even, anyone would admit that Gina Carano has not been very nice on Twitter lately. I think she's just handled the situation really poorly. But within this episode, I did think she did a really good job. And Cara Dune is a really interesting character. Female character. Really cool female character. When Paul Sun-Hyung Lee put down that New Republic badge, and by the way, he could stick around too as a Mando-specific character, I feel it would be great to see Dune maybe decide to become a joiner and use her. She said, I'm not a joiner. I'm like, well, maybe you are. And to use her skills to take on a bigger fight. But I think at the same time, it says just as much that she doesn't. I think it underscores a larger conversation about apathy. So sophisticated, right? This is a little Rogue One-like to me as well. My favorite of the new movies from Disney, because it's just so sophisticated. I mean, to explore that just because the Empire lost in Return of the Jedi doesn't mean they went away. I mean, we know they eventually become the First Order, and particularly today, it seems so timely to explore why the New Republic didn't work out and the Empire was able to rise again as the First Order. That is an incredible and a very sophisticated story for like a sci-fi, major franchise to cover. Television is the perfect space to do that. And I think that's the story that we're beginning to see unfold here when, the Mandalorian is allowed to be its own thing. I think it's really interesting. But I don't think we need to tie the Disney trilogy in too heavily. I'm seeing speculation online that the experiments at the base are early efforts to create Snoke, and that a variation of his music theme plays over that scene. Snoke was such a joke in the Disney trilogy. They did such a big job trying to build him up. Then he showed up for 15 minutes, right? And it's so far off from this time period, I would prefer that whatever Moff Gideon is working on would be something that had more of a short-term payoff. And maybe we'll see a bunch of Snokes, I don't know. But that said, if they want to do that, I enjoyed this episode so much that I'd be willing, okay, if I got to tie it into the Disney, the Disney trilogy, in my opinion, was such a mess. And Daisy Ridley has revealed that they were making it up literally as they went along. I don't want it to weigh down Star Wars stories that are now being told. It's like, it's too much of a burden to try and untangle that. Just go your own path. I did like the terminology, though, of the M count for blood, meaning the midichlorians count, talking about Baby Yoda's blood. They wanted to get a creature that was force sensitive, and nothing's more sensitive than Baby Yoda's species, or at least Baby Yoda. But I feel someone really needs to remind Jon Favreau of the Hitchcock rule of 3, that something needs to be referenced 3 times for audiences to really get it. And it can be referenced in dialogue or visually. But too often I feel really important details on this show slip through the cracks because of the writing And also, they just don't have enough time to properly lay the groundwork. On that note, though, I did really enjoy the world building this episode. The school at Navarro, I loved seeing another droid like C-3PO teaching the class. I thought the whole school scene really gelled. The extras, the children, they did a fantastic job, not just with their acting, but I thought the costume department did a really good job giving them that Star Wars feel. And the base had that wonderful imperial architecture that just screams Star Wars to me. I mean, Disney has focused a lot on Tatooine and that kind of desert look, for instance, for Galaxy's Edge. But I think people really like the Empire stuff, as evidenced by how popular the new Rise of Resistance ride is, which is largely Empire themed. I really do enjoy all the Empire scenes. They are so much fun, and you can just tell that the actors in those scenes are having such a good time twirling their space mustaches. As the saying goes, the best heroes have the best villains. So it's great. Although I think it is a huge joke that rebels can keep breaking into Empire bases, ships, cruisers, etc., and always come out totally unscathed. I don't know who's ever nervous to go on these missions because everybody always makes it out alive. It's a very Saturday morning cartoon. We'll talk about all the Empire people they kill in a moment. But I think that really, especially as Star Wars fan base ages up, because, but it's always had adult fans. But, people who grew up on it are now adults. And I think you need to at least have one or two casualties on these raids to really to make the stakes seem real. I also loved all the delightful toys these episodes. Where does he get all those wonderful toys? One apparently is literally a toy. The transport that they escaped the base on, it seems, was a 1970s toy that never appeared in any of the live-action Star Wars movies or TV shows until today. Apparently, it's been in a couple of the animated stuff. But we also got speeder bikes. Love speeder bikes. Still just as fun as they were in Return of the Jedi. Although, again, as we've discussed, when we had the same problem in Rise of the Last Skywalker, right? The final. I remember I forgot the name of the last movie that they just had to come out. It was the Skywalker run. But anyway, they were cheering on killing Empire soldiers there, stormtroopers, and it was really disturbing to have them cheered on here too. They were like, "Yeah, we killed him," and you're like, "Well, everybody fighting for each side is, is another person. You don't really know their story. I mean, I'm not saying you don't have to take them out because it was, one or the other, but I don't think you need to cheer about it." Then the helmet bounces by, and they're like, "Woohoo!" And I'm like, that was someone's family member. So yeah, it still rubs me a little bit the wrong way. But we had TIE fighters taking off as well, as we noticed in the one trailer that we got. A lot of great Mando jetpack action. Although I did wonder, how much gas does that little backpack hold? He's like, "I'm gonna jetpack all the way back to the city or the little encampment," and you're like, "You have that much gas in there? You've already used it to fly around a lot." But he does. And really, all the talk about who's the best pilot in the galaxy or in Star Wars, and Mando, he's not a part of that conversation. He should totally be a part of that conversation. Mando has become such an incredible pilot. I'd say that this episode and episode 2, I was just blown away by his pilot skills. I mean, his maneuvers. I think he might be the best pilot in Star Wars, quite frankly. Then finally, speaking of toys, the action figures that Moff Gideon is getting ready to play with at the end of the episode. I do wonder what he's up to. I was like, or whatever you're doing in that lab, are they supposed to wear these uniforms? I am curious as to what he's up to. And I loved that he too was in a room, the Empire, whenever someone's in charge of the Empire, they have to have their quarters have red lighting and lots of smoke. But you know what? It sells it. It sells it. I loved it. And they did a great job setting the stage for the remainder of the season, or raising the stakes, as Moff Gideon now has a tracker on Mando, but little does Moff Gideon know that Ahsoka is about to enter the chat. Rumor is she's showing up next week. Oh, for Thanksgiving, it's going to be great. So what did you think of this week's episode? Did you enjoy it as much as I did? Or do you just want more live-action Dave Filoni characters? Share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.